Hey, everybody, it's Andy with My Side of the Fence podcast. I am here with Rich Meyer again. Rich was our first interview, I think, right?
Yep.
And he is in the top 2 all time listened to. So, yeah, that's pretty lofty air.
Yeah, I had my family call in, said he liked it. A big family.
So we're going to do something a little bit different. This was Rich's idea. I hadn't envisioned it, but he is going to interview me today. So I'll do a little bit more of the talking, presumably. And I see that Rich has got a couple of pages of questions there. So go ahead, hit me.
You know, it's funny, Andy. You notice the pages.
4 pages.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We probably won't get to beyond 1. But hey, I got a question. You started out on Bennett Drive. How long did your family live there before you were born?
Oh no, I was 3 when we moved in there. Two or three.
Where were you living before that?
Long Street Drive.
Okay, all right. And then when you did move in on Bennett, there were 2 at the end of Bennett. There were 1 or 2 sort of not concrete, brick pillars. Were those the pillars that led originally onto the farm or something that was there?
I don't know.
Well, it always looked neat to me. Now, when you were growing up on Bennett, this was when you were just a little kid. This was the mid
70s, early 70s.
Early 70s. How open was it around there? Or how far did you have to go before you were kind of like almost out in the country? I mean, walking, not as a kid.
Well, there was that patch of woods over by the jail was larger, much larger than it is now. But basically, once you got out to like where my office is now, I mean, IBM was right over there. But other than that, it was country. That's what it was. There was nothing around the airport. We used to go 4-wheeling out by the airport.
Unbelievable. When you went to elementary school, you went to the old Bennett school, right?
Yeah.
And how did you get there? Did you walk the back way? Was there a back way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where Bennett, the school that was named Bennett, is now currently called Pennington. And we went through my parents' side yard, through the neighbor's backyard, and, across the street and over to the school, up over the hill and to the school.
I hate to admit learning something, but I've learned on live air, so to speak, something that I didn't realize before. I thought the old Bennett school was the old boarded up building by the courthouse.
That is also the Bennett School.
So I wasn't incorrect, but I didn't realize Pennington had been the successor, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I went to elementary school there.
See, that's why people need to listen into this, because they can learn things like that. I mean, when you would walk to school, was there a lot of wildlife? Did you see a lot of deer on the way to school or things like that?
Yeah, I certainly saw all sorts of animals, some deer, mostly smaller stuff, rabbits, things like that,
Right.
Snakes.
So would you say, like, in those days, and it wasn't, if you were older, then you could tell some real weird stories, but even in those days, were there a couple sections in Manassas, the more rural parts, where people might still shoot squirrels and
Sure.
things like that? No kidding.
Sure, maybe not inside the city limits.
Right.
You couldn't shoot a gun legally outside
Okay.
the city limits. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. And it might have happened at my house on Bennett Drive. but no, I don't think you can discharge weapons inside of, certainly since we were a city. But you didn't have to drive far to hunt at all.
Weren't there? I know up until 15 years ago or so, there was still at least one outhouse in the city.
Mm-hmm.
But when you were growing up, there was probably a bunch.
There were some. Yeah, there were some.
So, didn't people asking themselves, did Meyer come here just to ask about weird shit?
Yeah.
Well, so when you were in school, you played an instrument, didn't you?
I played the viola for a long time.
Did you pick the viola? How did it end up being a viola?
I don't recall exactly, but I remember thinking that the violins were just too small. I liked music. I've always liked music.
Right.
But I'm not one of those guys that has a tremendous amount of talent. So I could never like pick up the guitar and figure that out. I tried. I couldn't do it. But, the viola string, 4 strings, you play it with a bow. If you practice enough, you can be okay at it.
Is that the same number of strings as a violin?
It is.
Okay. It's just a different, I guess it plays in a different key.
Yeah. Well, it plays higher.
Right. Well, but it's not just a matter of an octave. It plays in, like, you can't read the same music. There needs to be a viola part and a violin. Or,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sports. I know you played baseball.
I played baseball for years. GMBL.
Like from when to when? Like you in your life?
Lord. I guess I played certainly in elementary school. I mean, there was no T-ball, and the baseball fields were where the jail is now. That was a baseball field. And the white part of the jail, adjacent to the new part of the jail, it's painted white cinder block, that was my 5th grade school. So I played there. I played probably, I don't know, certainly early grades up until almost high school.
What position did you play mostly?
Field, right field, center field. I played some shortstop, but I was too fat and slow for shortstop.
Didn't you once say to me something like, I wasn't fast, but if I could get to it, it wasn't getting
I can
past
catch
me.
it. I can catch it. That's absolutely true.
Oh, that's cool. Were you a good student?
I was middle of the road, 3.0, 2.8, something like that.
Did you do your homework?
Mostly, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I mean, the expectation set by my parents is you're going to school.
That's where I was going. So at some point, we're going to get into, no, we're not going to get into that yet. So how did you end up choosing Longwood?
So this is for half of the audience, they're going to be like, well, yeah, this is what you did. The younger half are going to be like, well, why didn't you just look it up on the internet? I applied to a couple of schools, and, back then you didn't get a lot. You got a book from high school that had the colleges in it. And, it seemed like it was kind of middle of the road. It had a science program, which is what I was interested in. You would never, at least then, characterize it as a research university, but, it seemed like it had a solid setup, and it wasn't, horribly expensive. So that's kind of how I picked it.
And when you were there, you chose earth science.
I chose earth science a long time before I got there.
Well, why earth science?
I'm a serial collector of things. I had a coin collection. I had a stamp collection. I had a rock collection. And I found it to be endlessly fascinating. And I also had a couple of really good science teachers in high school, where I took geology and stuff like that. And science, this was about the same time that Cosmos, Carl Sagan's series, was airing. And science fascinated me endlessly. So, and the earth science program there was pretty solid. And earth science is more of like a science survey bunch of classes. Right. You're not going to get tons of geology and you're going to get a little bit of everything.
Right. So you graduate from college and you get your first college-related job, a job that relates to what you studied.
Yep.
And what was that? Where was it?
It was in Herndon. It was a company called Geotrans. And Geotrans' claim to fame was the two guys that founded it. They were the first people really to write a computer model for groundwater flow. So you could simulate groundwater flow. And that was my first. Turns out I had no idea. Again, pre-internet. You're faxing resumes to these places, right? You read in paper ads in the Washington Post. And I worked there for 6 years, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite jobs ever.
They're good guys, learned a lot.
Good guys. I got great. By hook or by crook, I stumbled into some great opportunities there. I spent a lot of time in the field my first year there, and I didn't love that. That work was kind of boring. And then one day I happened to be in the office, And someone said, well, do we have anybody here that knows AutoCAD, which is a drafting program? And in college, I interned at a DoD contractor, and I learned AutoCAD. So I said, well, I know AutoCAD. That was the last day I went to the field.
So, what isn't there a Brooks Brothers story associated with that job?
No.
Sure, it's someone.
Oh. So one of the co-founders, his name was Charlie. He, it was a high-end consultancy. We made pretty decent money. Well, I didn't, but they did. He bought a cabin. He was a pretty eccentric guy. He bought a cabin. I'm talking like 1800s cabin, right? Way out past Winchester, and he showed up to the office almost every day, but he had no concept of looking at his calendar and see what was going on. So I'd walk in the door, hair going crazy every direction, and they're like, "You have a meeting with the government this afternoon." So the lady his secretary had a contact at Brooks Brothers, and every time this happened, she just called him, and someone drove to the store and got the clothes and came back. Well, one day, a coworker and myself were out there. We had spent the morning out in the woods shooting at deer, not hitting them. And then we came back in, and the wind was starting to blow. And you could see out under the front door, right? It was not just like a little crack. It was a good 2 or 3 inches. So we needed something to stuff in there. Well, we're looking around and we find this box with all these white shirts. And I hold it up. It's a Brooks Brothers shirt. He wears these things exactly one time. He wears them home and tosses them in a box, and that's the end of it. So we use those.
Wow. So before you started off on your own, did you have another job in between?
Oh, I had like 4 jobs in between.
Okay.
I was the last 4 years at Geotrans, all I did was IT. I learned to write in 2 or 3 different languages. I learned networking. Again, no internet, just doping it out. And at the time, IT people that had some kind of useful experience were vanishingly, or rare, or not a lot of them. And that's kind of the reason I left Geotrans, is because I worked there for 6 years, and I think I was making $32,000 a year. And that's 1995-ish and 1994. And, I had wife, we wanted to start a family, and, needed to make more money. And I went to my boss and I said, look, I love working here. It's a ball, but I'm doing IT work. And, I did some homework. Like, if you have to hire someone to replace me, you're going to have to pay them $50,000 or $60,000 a year. And I'm not looking for the whole amount, but I feel like I deserve some consideration. I've worked on the company clock, but I've also worked a lot off the clock, because Sarah at the time was working a swing shift, so she didn't get home until 9 or 10. And so I just worked. And he went, well, let me go talk to the accountants. And they said no. So I started, I put out resumes, started applying for jobs. I got one job working at a place called Global Mail. They basically would take mail, physical paper mail that was bound for overseas, and package it up and buy excess space on passenger planes and deliver it to those countries. And it was cheaper than the customer just putting a stamp on it. I lasted about a year there. I worked in the finance and administration section. There were 12 people. After 1 year, we were all gone. And I was the last of the Mohicans. They hired some replacements. But my bosses said, well, why is everyone leaving? And I said, my boss. No one likes him. And they said, well, would you consider staying? I said, sure, fire him. And they said, well, we can't do that. And I said, well, then you need an IT guy. And then another place, I worked at a little nonprofit. And the last place I worked was a place called Max Worldwide. They were in Herndon. They ran call center for USAA Insurance and some other client. I don't remember who. That was the last job before I started this company.
So, but it sounds like as a result of a combination of those jobs, you developed a number of different skills that you probably would not have been able to develop simply staying at one job.
Yeah. Yeah. That's accurate. I mean, the last job I had, I was an Oracle database administrator. So I was making a hell of a lot of money doing that. Certainly way more than the $32,000 I started out with several years before.
And then we all know that, at some point you make the big jump. You've talked about it a lot on this podcast. I don't want to ask a bunch of questions about it, but if there's something you want to say about it, bring it on.
I would simply say that not a lot of planning and thought went into starting the company. We had no money saved, no nothing. So it was a real struggle, but that's
pretty epic move. I mean, daring.
Foolish,
scary.
Daring. Yeah.
So at what point were you always interested in public affairs? I mean, at what point, even locally? I mean, I don't know what people focus on. I guess what people first focus on when they're growing up is locally because it's happening around you. Of course, it's not on TV.
Yeah.
But, so at what point did you just start getting interested?
It first manifested itself. I started writing columns for the Journal Messenger, opinion pieces.
Before that, because you didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to write columns because I'm not interested in anything. So at what point did you become interested enough to write columns? That's where I'm going.
I don't recall exactly how it happened. I started getting more involved in city politics, in as much as I went to a Republican meeting every now and then. And I knew most of the people on the city council already, but I think it just, to do some research and to do some thinking and write about it has always been something that I've loved. I've always loved doing that.
So I don't want to skip all this stuff on when you were on city council. So do you remember what your first editorial was?
It's on my wall at home, but it said, I think it was, "For Old Town's future, plan now, argue later." I think it was something like that.
When you look at it, are you proud of it or ashamed of it?
It's behind a desk.
Well, I'm sure the writing style was good. But early on you said you were interested in science. And that doesn't mean, certainly when someone's interested in science, it doesn't mean they're not interested in other things, but you're also a real good writer. When did that come about? I mean, did you think you were a pretty good writer early on? I don't mean in grade school, but in college.
And, again, this is certainly not, I didn't write a hell of a lot in college. Not formal pieces, right? I've had probably 3 or 4 teachers. I don't want to denigrate any of the other teachers, but I've had 3 or 4 teachers in high school that were really central to me, to getting me interested in things. And Mrs. Shaw, she was an English teacher that gave me no quarter. She believed that I could, write, that I was creative, and that I was just lazy. She gave me no quarter. And that's where writing really started for me, because she would push and push and push.
So you were writing, you were getting involved in things, you had your editorials going, and at a certain point, you make a decision to run for office.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I assume, were starting to attend some party events.
Yeah.
So leaving names out, unless you want to include them, did you approach someone or did they approach you?
Mostly they approached me. I would note that it is not the party leadership at the time who they thought I was too conservative. Now, my Tea Party friends would certainly take exception to that, but no, it was other people came to me, and a lot of it had to do with people were starting to read and talk about the columns that I wrote. So they said, "Well, you seem to be like you're a big idea guy.
Right.
Go
Right.
do big ideas.
Good communication skills
Yeah.
go far. So who did you run against? Do you remember?
Oh. So we ran, I think there were 4 of us. It was me.
This is in the early stage, the primary
The
stage.
primary, yeah.
Right.
It was me, Avani, I think Judy Hayes, and Maureen Wood. And Judy had been on the council, I don't know how many terms, but we had a convention, and I don't know if the party had conventions previously. I guess they did. But with Avani's inclusion in that, I think the tilt of the convention was more conservative. Mark's people will show up if it's raining blood. I mean, there's just my people, well, I don't know. It's a beautiful spring day. I got to take kids to the soccer game. Sorry, Andy. And I get it. But so the conservatives really did control that convention. And Judy, I guess, was viewed as sort of the odd man out.
So at that point, you end up getting elected.
Yeah.
And how quickly did you realize that things worked differently than you thought they did?
Almost immediately. One of the first things I wanted to do was, I was writing that blog, right? I mean, I had a bit of a run-in with the establishment because I was writing that blog, and the other council members did not like it. There was some, no one ever brought it directly to me, but, I found out secondhand, like they'd had discussions about, is this permissible or is this something you can do? Now, we, of course, in the current day, right, we laugh, we kind of laugh about that. Well, yeah, of course everybody does stuff like that now, or they do things like podcasts. But back then it was a lot different, If something was going to be reported on, the Journal Messenger would report on it. But one of the first things I wanted to do was vote against building the parking garage. And the city manager dragged me into his office like, come here, new guy. You're not doing, or maybe it was the mayor, I don't remember. But they were like, no, this is not a thing. You're voting for this. These guys are giving us millions of dollars, and we need this parking garage. So, yeah.
Right.
That happened twice.
I'm not completely surprised. What did you have? I don't know if I want to use the word mentor. Might be too strong a word, but in terms of other council members, is there someone you might have considered a mentor? I know there were people you respected.
Yeah, well, I respected, even if I didn't always get along with all of them, I respected each one of them for their willingness to serve and being generally thoughtful about things. I think, I really did get along well with Steve Randolph. And he was always he had a lot of horse sense, right? And, if I had questions, I asked Hal. Hal was always happy to take my phone calls. The rest of them, those were the 2 that I interacted probably the easiest with. I mean, you got to remember, I was 39, and the next youngest guy was probably 60, 50, middle 50s at the, I don't know how old Hal was then, but, it was me and Avani. We were about the same age, I think. So, I mean, real generational difference, right?
Right.
In approach. So it would probably be those 2 guys.
So something you worked on real hard in at council was the Battle Street project.
Yeah.
What was the hardest thing to do about that?
Everything was hard about it. Everything. We in hindsight, the amount of money that we're talking about is ridiculous. When you look at what kind of money the council's putting forward now on projects, we shot, you were in one. We shot those little short movie clips to talk about Battle Street or talk about Mathis.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I noticed as I get older and less good looking, I'm in a few movie clips. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, but it was ridiculously difficult. But yeah, it wasn't a tremendous amount of money. And, we got 2 or 3 of those things done. And the rest of them just kind of withered on the vine. But the Battle Street one was the big one.
So at a certain point, you know, you decide to leave council.
Mm-hmm.
What was the reason? I would imagine there were multiple reasons.
There were. We had been through the Great Recession, and that was no fun, to put it mildly. We laid off police officers during the Great Recession, and we were cutting the budget, and all those people that were getting laid off were in the council chambers when we voted on that budget, and I knew a lot of them, and I had to vote to put them out on the street, and that's not a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, serving on council is not about fun; it's about service. But still, these are things that we could just find no other way. There was that, and at the time, the council seemed less and less inclined to engage in, big thinking and let's go do important new things. There wasn't a lot of appetite for that. And, the party, of course, kept saying, look, are you going to run or not? You're going to run or not? We have other people that want to run. And I said, well, then tell them to run. But I'm not telling you whether or not I'm doing this. And the night before the filing deadline, Sarah and I were walking around the Old Town. We made like 2 circuits around Old Town, and just kind of kicking it back and forth. Something they should do. And I said, well, as opposed to like the first term, it doesn't take as much time now, and because the council is taking less action. And then I kind of stopped and I said, and that's the problem. I don't get involved in this just to go to finance committee meetings and listen to people present about why you should spend money on this, that, and the other. I mean, that's a part of it, right? But the reason I did it was twofold, really. Public service, number one, and number two, try and get Manassas thinking about like what the next big thing is. You could argue there have been a number of big things in our history, like Manassas, the airport, IBM / Micron / whoever owns this across the street now. And, I had been to, I think the first time I went to Shirlington, I went with you and Scott. And, that is cool, right? Well, why can't we do something like that? And there just was no appetite for it. So that's why I left.
And you were in for how many years?
I was in there for 8 years.
And also was vice mayor?
I think I was vice mayor for 6 of the 8, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you about running against Hal.
For mayor?
What do you want to, and I really hope you have an opportunity to have Hal on your podcast.
He'll be on shortly.
But you know what? But since you're here and we're talking at the moment, just an observation.
So, someone close to me and very wise advised me not to do this. But, I was still in that mode, like, think big. We need to do big things and stop being modest. And so I decided to do it. And Hal kicked my ass. And when I talk to people that we both know, the consensus was kind of, it's not quite your turn yet. And I got that, but I wanted to get things done. So I ran. I was pissed off when I lost, but I can tell you that it was my impression that Hal kind of came around on some of those things, and he was a very useful ally to getting some of that stuff done that I wanted to get done. Hal is a very careful politician. I give him a lot of credit for that because I wasn't. But he kind of came around on 2 or 3 things that I was super interested in. So at the end of the day, it was worth it, but doing it was painful. And
you and Hal are friends now. You're
sure.
both cattlemen. That's
sure.
a whole other story which we can address. But
I mean, there were some hard feelings for a little while, but we had a drink and got over it.
I can't imagine. But that's right. That's right. The podcast.
Yep.
You know, you and I had this discussion when you were thinking about doing the podcast, and it was like, are you trying to feed a creative drive? Are you trying to do something relevant? Is it, what's that about? And what were you thinking then, and what have you discovered since then about why you thought you were doing it and what you're doing now? Maybe they're one and the same.
So the idea initially was, local papers are dead. Like I've said on here 100 times, I'm very thankful for Uriah and his efforts and Potomac, all those guys, right? But, we need more of those guys, not less. And you don't get, newspapers, except for the New York Times Magazine, don't do long format, right? And podcasts, I wouldn't say it's new, but it's new media probably. And that was the idea, is let's get some information out there. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to play games. I don't want to get somebody on here and say, hey, what's the old joke? Have you stopped beating your wife yet? There's not a right answer to that question, right? I don't want to do that. Even with people that politically I really disagree with, I enjoy having them on. I'm going to interview them. I'm going to have a good time. And that's going to be it. But it was creative as well, but primarily just another way to get information out to people.
It would seem, from my observation, it would seem to me that yes, information has gotten out, but I think the type of information people get to better know the person who's on the podcast.
Yeah.
They may simply know what they've heard about them, what positions they hold, but I think it humanizes things. Yeah. And in an era of social media where everything's dehumanized,
right?
Because that's how it is.
That's how it works.
And it's a giant shame. I think that's a big difference. And I think by you're asking questions, but you're not trying to gotcha.
No.
And which is, there's all types of journalism. I'm not commenting on anything else, but you try to provide a reasonable, safe, predictable.
The idea is the lightest possible touch.
Right.
Am I going to ask about issues of the day? Sure. But I'm not gonna, because look, I'm also not that familiar with the city budget anymore. So I can't say, well, why did we spend, $100,000 on, new signs for the high school or something? I don't know anything about that.
What have you learned since you started the podcast?
People give you so much dirt off the podcast, off the recording. I can't tell you how much stuff people will just tell you for the asking, either before or after they come on the podcast. Now, it's stuff I would never share. But it surprises me how much people will tell you just for the asking.
When I wrote some notes for myself, I said, have the podcast changed any of your views? I don't mean whether they've changed your political views. I'm not sure what to say. Maybe you answered that question already in terms of people tell you dirt so long as they know they're not on air.
Yeah. It's not. I learned about the third or fourth episode in that although I don't really have to do much research or homework for this thing, because they're local issues and I'm familiar with them, but you have to do some legwork. You have to prepare. It's just like anything else.
I just want to note that in the course of this, we've been drinking a 2005 Bordeaux from the left bank. Andy's a left bank guy.
I'm a left bank guy.
So in this case, it's a Pauillac. I brought him wine because I wanted to throw him off his game. Usually when someone comes in here, if they're having any alcohol, they're drinking some brown stuff.
Yeah.
Today it's the purple stuff.
No, it's a fantastic wine. It's from 2005 too, and that was a great year. A great year.
No one would think that with me being on here and you being on here, I think the betting world would be they're going to run over time. But I don't think that's going to happen. What I'd like to do for a couple of questions here, not quite a Rorschach test or whatever it's called, but you can give me a long answer if you want, but I want you to give me the first answer that comes to your mind.
All right.
And then you can explain it away. You can say, oh, I didn't mean it. You can run down the street, you can edit it out afterwards. You ready for the first one?
Yeah.
Advice for the young.
Just like life advice in general?
Advice for the young.
Life is shorter than you think. I can tell you that 2 days ago, I was 35.
Advice for others.
Stay out of politics.
Why stay out of politics?
It's I feel like it's become kind of dehumanizing. And so I guess the antidote really is for more people to get involved, right? But it depends on the people that are involved. Local politics, even now, the mayor has a full-time assistant, I believe. I don't think the council members do. But, they have offices and all that fun and games, right? It takes a tremendous amount of time. And how younger people do it, some of them are younger than me when I was elected, I believe. Now, I know they are. And they have kids. I don't know how the hell they do it. But what is it if you need a friend, get a dog?
There it is. What? Sort of a real reflective issue here. What sort of personal characteristic is it of yours that has helped you succeed, or that brings you to where you are today, which in my view is a success?
There's two: grit and creativity. I learned grit working construction and surveying.
The future of Manassas.
Mm-hmm.
The quick answer first.
Cloudy. And that's the result of the city council's actions. It's been intentional. That's not a criticism. They have big pieces of land that they've bought whose future, they were talking about some sort of deal right before the last election, which was clearly probably not anywhere near complete, but they own big pieces of land whose future is largely undetermined. So cloudy doesn't mean bad. It just means it's far from certain.
Future of the country.
It's a mess. I think that depends on the next 3 years of, Trump's time in office as to how far down the rabbit hole the Congress and the courts want to let him go. I think a lot of people support some of those policies. Clearly immigration had gotten so out of hand during both the stay in office of both parties. And I'm not talking about like Trump Biden. I'm talking about Bush. It had gotten so bad because remember, that's why the city got sued for trying to redefine family. And that was in what, 2007, something like that. And, it's been a problem since then. Congress has done nothing about it in the entirety of the time. Bush did nothing, Obama, none of those guys. So, this is what you end up with when that policy has been allowed to rot as long as it did. So people, they don't love the way it looks. They don't love ICE agents running into cities with, face masks and guns and all that shit. I don't love that, but I understand why it's there. And I think the American people need to be clear-eyed about that kind of thing. But the future of the country, I still think it's the greatest country in the world. I still think we have potential. Even if Trump managed to spend the next 4 years tearing things apart, some people will love that, some people will hate it. I still think there's plenty of America left.
Andy, do you have any concluding remarks? And this may be
Concluding?
your shortest podcast.
Not really. I mean, I'm tremendously fortunate. We built a successful business, got a, reasonably happy family. Things are going along.
Well, now then I have a question.
Ah.
Before you talked about how, when you're on your jobs or you're on city council, you felt it was so important to take on some big issues, really, really push, or whatever your words were. And I know that doing epic things is important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So are you telling me that, you have no epic thing you're pondering?
Currently, I mean, I've kind of by needs of the business, I've shifted gears a little bit on some of that stuff.
Right.
Making sure the business is in good shape. Pour me a little bit more of that. Making sure the business is in good shape, requires skill sets that I was not all that conversant in. It requires that, in a 10-person company, someone's got to provide feedback for people, right? And work with employees and mentor people and stuff like that. These are not skills that, I ever needed. And especially over the last 5 or 6 years. So I kind of shifted gears from that. About the most epic thing I've done lately is just to start the podcast. Oh, the wine's great. That's about the most epic thing I've done. And, it just came down to, I originally had bought these microphones. These are like, the ghetto equivalent of fancy podcaster microphones. They're about 7 years old. And I was going to do an IT podcast back then. And I had an employee here who was going to help pitch in with it because he liked it. And then he left, and then, COVID happened, and it just kind of fell by the wayside. And, I have this Mac here. It's about 6 years old, I want to say. And I bought that little box over there for the microphones. And I hauled these out of the closet, and I used ChatGPT to create a logo for the podcast. And I said, well, let's just start recording. And kind of here we are. So that's about the most epic thing I've done lately.
So Manassas is a place where you can own your own business, where you can you have opportunities to be creative. You can live near where you're working.
Yeah.
You can drink good wine, if you want to buy it. Andy, I think this is a very good podcast. How do you feel about it?
It's good. I do want to circle back, though, to like the future of the city thing,
Yes.
maybe the current state. I think that I hate that Grand Avenue project. I like the roundabout. It needs to be a little bit bigger and centered. Getting rid of that other lane, I understand the thinking, but I don't love it. But I do like that it's an actual streetscape, like down near where you and I live.
Right.
And Georgetown South is not kind of like on an island by itself anymore. And the police station, Doug Keene doesn't love me for this, but I don't love that location. But I do see the benefit. And when he was on, he was talking about redeveloping that shopping center. Man, I think it's a treasure. I really do. We have probably 2 or 3 really solid Latin American restaurants in Manassas. and at least one or two of them is there.
Oh, it's real when you go there.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It helps know a little Spanish.
I like the food truck too.
The food truck's dynamite.
Absolutely. So I guess I mean, you've raised it before, and I don't want to go too long, but you've mentioned before that having the police station there, reduces the tax base
Yeah.
because you can't have other private businesses there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but it's not, I don't love the location, but I understand it. It's a decent bookend for that shopping center.
Yeah.
And the shopping center, I mean, it's Georgetown South has gone through probably 2 or 3 different phases, right? And, it's a Latino neighborhood. And I think that's fabulous. I really do. The stores there and the people, like, they've made it home. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a credit to Manassas.
Increasingly safe.
Yeah, it's increasingly safe. And, unfortunately, probably increasingly unaffordable as those things start to happen. And this area, especially, that naturally happens. But
even if we get more expensive, we're still less expensive than other places.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So,
but that's what I think. I mean, and I do give the council credit. They had the gumption to actually do all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. We've gone from the guys who came before me. The city hall is 4 floors tall, right? Mm-hmm. The council that voted to do that approved it only if the city agreed not to finish the 4th floor. So it wouldn't have to pay to put people in there because they wanted to keep the head count down. So you've gone through that kind of thinking to the kind of thinking that was on the council when I was on there, and then to now, where, they take a much more expansive view of the involvement of the council. So I do give them credit for that. I don't love it, but I do give them credit for it.
So we're still going to end up at an hour, but we can still mention one or two more things.
Yeah. You got more questions over there? You must.
Well, not written.
Oh, okay.
These are the secret questions. I'm actually closing my book. There's a city council meeting tonight. Mm-hmm. And there's a number of proclamations and other great things. 2 things is raises for city council.
I saw that.
And the second thing is has to do with putting in these giant big batteries, storage batteries at the Church Street station.
Right.
And that's attracted a tremendous amount of interest, most notably by the people who live adjacent to it.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's real safety issues related to it, I don't mean bugaboo kind of issues, but if there's real safety issues that are not addressed, I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're addressed or not. I had an opportunity this past week to go over there, and I see the proximity to the houses.
Cool.
And I understand that. But we'll see how the city council deals with that this evening, and how city staff deals with it. And either it's ready to go, or they decide it's not ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, the electric thing. When I was on council, we were fortunate enough to have a guy named John Hewitt.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, very well.
He's a brilliant engineer.
Right.
And he explained the electrical issues of the day to me in terms that I could get, right?
Right.
And I learned some amount about electricity, and well, a hell of a lot more about it than I do. But, the situation that the data centers are creating is real. And it's not easily resolvable. So the battery thing, I don't know if that helps us insulate from problems or price spikes at PJM grid. I don't know. But Manassas has always had, except for the issue with the substation over there, we've always had tremendous utilities. And, they'll get it sorted out. I have faith in them.
The way I see it on the stations is if there's a safety issue, no. If you really damage people's property value, well, maybe you got to do something about it.
Yeah.
And But if safety's not resolved, I mean, that's,
you just
that's
can't.
an obvious. But that thing could end up making us, credit, so to speak, I guess, to utility rates, 300,000 a year over 10 years, 3 million. And it just keeps going.
Do we still
But-
use peakers?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that the contract with Dominion.
PJM, no, it did. This is all through PJM now.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, the city's has done extremely well
Yeah.
regarding that. It's all complicated. First of all, you have the data center question.
Yeah.
Secondly, regardless of where data centers are, there's going to be more of them.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they need to be here. That's not my point.
Right.
But there's going to be more of them, a lot more of them. In fact, I don't know anyone who says, I'm getting rid of my digital devices. No, it's like, give me more and I'm buying the next one.
People, I mean, these things make cell phones,
Man,
make
I want a
content.
big house and I want it cold in the summer and warm in the winter.
Exactly right.
So and then if manufacturing is brought back to this country, which is the goal of this administration, where's that electricity going to come from? So NERC, the North American Electric Coordinating Council, I mean, they've got all kinds of warnings out. It's no secret.
Yeah.
Not giant red flags, but
They're there.
real flags.
Yeah.
And because they are I was going to say non-denominational, they really are a very straight up group. They go out of their way, I think, to not appear political, and but it's there if you read those reports, which are absolutely massive. And I don't know what we're going to do about that. But that's a real issue. I'm not saying that these things solve the problem or don't
Right.
address the problem at all. I'm
Right.
just talking about two separate things. Neil Chatterjee, a guy I worked with who then later on became chairman of FERC and is now in the private sector very successly. He's on Fox News a lot.
Oh, wow.
And his big thing is these days, and I shared something of his earlier today. It's like, Mr. Trump and President Trump, if you want to succeed in energy, do this.
Right.
You got the power to do it. You can do this. So I don't know how anyone tracks down watching Neil on wherever, but he's the guy. He is absolutely the guy.
Yeah. Well, Trump's got to lead the way probably on nuclear.
Oh yeah, and I'll tell you,
It's got to be.
So it's here we go.
That's fine.
Well, with nuclear, unless the feds do something,
Right.
nothing's getting done.
No.
That's number one. Number two, if you think people are nervous about
The batteries.
batteries, wait till you tell them you're building something nuclear near them.
Right. Right.
And, a thing that could get traction at some point is sort of modular devices that typically I think means a little smaller, but it certainly means sort of standardized.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, they're still not going to be that small.
No.
And people are going to be real nervous. What's the zone around this?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that's going to come up tonight, I'm sure.
Oh, I saw that
The zone of
graphic.
safety and all this was
saw it on
well
Facebook.
put together.
They're in real concerns. There's 27,000 people live in that one circle.
Sure.
The other thing you asked me about was council salaries.
Well, I didn't ask. I mentioned that it was on.
I think for members of to me, I've heard people say, well, council needs to pay a living wage. The city council is a volunteer public service job. That's what it is. It should not be paid $50,000, $60,000 a year. It's public service. You do it because you love to do it. Now, would a reasonable raise every year, cost of living or something, be okay? Sure. But doubling your salary, I don't see how, if we're intellectually honest about this, how raising taxes 6 to 8% a year, doubling the city council salaries, and then talk about, we need more affordable housing when the cost of living goes up automatically that much every year.
Right.
I don't feel like it's intellectually honest. And, I don't begrudge the council members a salary or some benefits, but I think to double your salary is pretty outrageous to me. I do. It's public service. The city's not appreciably larger than when I was in council. Doesn't have that many more residents. The government has certainly gotten a lot bigger, but I don't love it.
One of the things that I guess I was surprised, although had I thought about it, I wouldn't have been, is when I was in the private sector, but it was a large organization and we had a lot of money to work with.
You did.
I mean, a whole lot. And so when an important question came up, you might spend a large amount of money on a study. And I mean like a real study, like economists and, banging heads together and all this. And then, when you're in I know we're not a tiny city, but, when it's time to get a study done here, it's hard to find money to do the kind of studies that people would like or
yeah.
I was surprised. And I realized, yes, it's a matter of economics and, you can do studies of all kinds of things. You got to be surgical about, your priorities. But it's hard for a city to do a true in-depth study of something.
No, that doesn't. Most studies cost what, $30,000-$40,000, something like that.
Yeah, I was talking more like $500,000.
No, I know what you're talking about, but and the studies that the city would tend to do are a little bit more reduced in scope than something like NRECA would do. We're talking about what happens to traffic numbers if we build 50 townhouses. NRECA or any of those guys, they're talking about the entire country, and we need to understand
that's true.
This stuff, right? So, that's a thing.
So the cattlemen, every once in a while, someone asks me, what's that about, or what is it? There's a bunch of guys that hang out.
Yeah.
They go, is there like some kind of test to get in? I said, I don't know. No, there's no test. Now, I don't know what that means, but no, there's no test.
There's no test.
There's no test. And there's no, there's no pledge of allegiance to the cattlemen.
Nope.
There's certainly no political test. In fact, one of the things we kind of pride ourselves about, I don't know if that's the right word, is a real diversity in political views.
Oh, yeah.
They're big. They're real big. You have,
Well, it's gotten heated occasionally.
Yeah, as well it should. At one point, I'm going to. I could make Hal nervous just by saying this. At one point, the question should be: should we discuss issues that kind of, raise the hair?
Yeah.
And Hal said, to his credit, he said, "Look, if we're not going to talk about things that matter." He goes, it's just, let's not do this. I respect him for that.
Yeah, well, he's right. Like I said, Hal's a very careful politician. And exchanging ideas and thoughts like that's important.
Well, connecting the cattlemen to that kind of thinking is what sort of caused the cattlemen to start in the first place.
Yeah.
You were, it wasn't called a cattleman. It wasn't on Saturdays, but it was that Friday group that you were holding.
Yeah.
And I guess you were doing it as a sounding board. I don't know. I think it was intended to be an organizational, informal.
No.
But it was definitely a sounding board.
Yeah. It was an attempt to get feedback. And I had people like Ray Beveridge stop by on the regular.
Oh yeah.
And Ray is a very thoughtful guy. And Ray does a lot of homework, even now.
Right.
He moved to
Buffalo.
No, that was Art Bushnell.
Oh, okay.
He's in Texas now, by the way. I don't know. He's in Norfolk, somewhere down there, Hampton. And he still posts stuff on Facebook that I see that he's still involved. But no, that kind of was it. But then, no, there's no test for the cattlemen, but I wouldn't say we even have we don't have written membership requirements, but
Absolutely not.
But we know what they are.
Well, no, actually, we don't know what they are. Each person has their own.
Well, yeah.
I would say that we have no. I don't know what yours is. I don't. Is there ever a formal vote?
No.
Things just kind of happen.
I mean, people
Very
show
organic,
up,
man.
and they either sort of stick or they don't.
That's how it is, man. That's how it is.
But they have. I mean, it's definitely it's a wired in group for sure.
It's a what?
Wired in. They know people. There's people there know what's going on. Even if they're all not like volunteering or something, they're still super involved in their community.
Oh yeah. Well, you have politicians, spouses of, to call them politicians. You have people who serve the community.
Yeah.
You have spouses of people who serve the community. You have law enforcement professionals, just all kinds of people. Lawyers.
A couple lawyers.
I know. Try to keep that number down.
Gotta keep it to a minimum.
Anyway, look.
One guy from Germany.
One guy from Germany who, well, we love him. He's a great guy.
He's a good guy.
We love everything.
He brings that Euro perspective for sure.
Yes, he certainly does. He likes soccer a bit too much.
A bit too much. But that's still, what do we allow for soccer now? 30 seconds?
30 seconds. And, I've had to really enforce
Have you?
that rule. I've almost gotten physical. But that's it. Andy, we've done it.
All right, man.
Brother. Okay?
All
Good
right.
job.
Thanks, Rich.
You bet.